Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something a little different. We're syncing our watches to a very specific, very turbulent year in history, 1968.
1968. I mean, that year just conjures up so many images.
It really does.
We've got riots in Paris, protests across America, the Vietnam War heating up. It really felt like the whole world was on fire.
Exactly. The West was just loud. Right. It was chaotic and screaming for change. But if you sort of pan the camera over to Stockholm, Sweden, in December of that year, something much quieter, but I'd argue equally revolutionary was happening.
Right.
For the very first time in history, the Western literary establishment, talking about the Nobel Committee, they finally looked east. They opened the gates to Japan.
It was a huge moment, a watershed moment, really. They awarded the Nobel Prize in Literature to Yasunari Kawabata.
Yeah.
And in doing so, they weren't just honoring one man.
No.
They were, for the first time, acknowledging an entire aesthetic universe that the West had, for the most part, just completely ignored.
And that's the hook for me. That's what I couldn't let go of. Because when you look at the pictures of Kawabata, this frail, silver-haired man in a tuxedo standing among all these towering Western figures, he just looks like the epitome of traditional Japan.
He really does.
You read his citation, and it's all about narrative mastery and great sensibility. You read descriptions of his prose, and they use words like spare, lyrical, haiku-like. It all sounds so peaceful.
It does. It sounds like a Zen garden in literary form.
Right, but then you start digging. You open the file on his life, and you realize that this piece is actually a fortress. It's a wall he built to hold back this absolute tidal wave of trauma.
Yeah.
The more I read about his early life, the more I realized that his obsession with beauty wasn't really about flowers and tea ceremonies. It was a survival mechanism.
You've just hit on the central paradox of Kawabata. He is so often misread, especially here in the West, as this gentle purveyor of, exotic Japan. But if you actually read the texts, and if you look at the biography we have in front of us, you see that his work is defined by a profound, almost terrifying isolation. He was a man who stared right into the abyss and then just decided to describe how beautiful the darkness was.
So that is our mission today. We are not just doing a book report. We are going to try to unpack the psychology of a survivor.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're going to look at how a man who lost literally everyone he loved before he could even vote managed to bridge this huge gap between ancient Japanese tradition and, cutthroat European modernism.
And we're going to try to answer the question that I think everyone has when they first read him.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Why do his stories, which famously never seem to have real endings, why do they stick with us so hard?
It's a journey into art for art's sake, but an art that was born from a kind of loneliness that most of us, thankfully, can't even begin to imagine. So let's start right there with the loneliness. Because lonely feels, it feels like too small a word for what happened to this kid.
It's an understatement.
When I was going through the timeline of his childhood in Osaka, I honestly had to stop and check the source material because I thought there must have been a typo.
It's brutal.
It reads less like a biography and more like a Victorian horror story.
It is the orphan narrative. And in Japanese literary criticism, this isn't just, a footnote in his life.
Yeah.
It is considered the foundational trauma of his entire existence. It explains everything.
Okay, so let's walk through this because the sheer pacing of it matters. Kawabata is born in 1899 in Osaka. His father's a doctor from a highly educated, wealthy family. On paper, things look good.
Right, a privileged start. But then the dominoes just start to fall. So fast.
Unbelievably fast.
First, his father. He dies of tuberculosis when Kawabata is just 2 years old.
Okay, that's a tragedy. But he still has his mother.
For one more year. His mother dies when he's 3.
So at age 3, an age where you barely have forming memories, he is, for all intents and purposes, an orphan. He's sent to live with his grandparents. Now, he had an older sister, right?
He does. But this is where the isolation starts to become structural. It's not just about loss, it's about separation. He isn't kept with his sister.
They split them up.
She is sent to live with an aunt. Kawabata stays with the grandparents.
This separation alone is just brutal. I mean, did they even see each other?
Almost never. The records we have show they met only one time after that initial separation.
One time?
One time. It was in July 1909. Kawabata was 10 years old. Just try to imagine that reunion. You're 10. This is your only sibling, your only living link to your parents.
And then, what happened?
She died the next year. He was 11.
Oh my God. It's relentless. And we aren't even done.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So he's living with his grandparents. His grandmother is the matriarch, the primary caregiver.
And she dies in September 1906. Kawabata is 7.
So from the age of 7 to the age of 15, his entire world shrinks down to just one person, his grandfather.
And this isn't some spry, active grandfather who takes him fishing. The sources are pretty clear that he was blind and very ill, right?
Yes. And this is a really crucial detail for his development as a writer. Imagine being a young boy, 7, 8, 9 years old, living in this dark, quiet house with a blind, dying old man.
He became a caretaker.
He became his nurse. He was changing bedpans. He was feeding him. He was describing the world outside the window to him. He was essentially living in a hospice as a child.
And then the final blow, the one that leaves him completely alone, comes in May of 1914.
His grandfather dies.
Kawabata is 15.
Let's just pause there. Let's look at that scorecard.
Right.
By the age of 15, he has lost his father, his mother, his grandmother, his only sister, and his grandfather.
He is the last one standing. He has lost every single close paternal relative he has in the world.
That is the definition of what you call the orphan psychology. It's more than just grief, isn't it? It's like, it's a lesson.
It's the universe teaching him a lesson, yes.
Yeah.
And the lesson is that connection is cursed. If you love someone, they die. That's what he learned before he even hit puberty. There's a detail in the biography that just chilled me. He was known in his local area as the Master of Funerals.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine that label on a teenager?
It's unthinkable. The Master of Funerals. It sounds like a character from one of his own novels.
So, practically speaking, where does he go? He's 15 years old. He's on his own.
Well, he moves in briefly with his mother's family, the Kurodas. But, and this is so telling, he doesn't stay. He can't seem to integrate into a new family. It's like the habit of being alone is already too strong.
He doesn't know how to be part of a family anymore.
It seems that way. By January 1916, at age 16, he moves into a boarding house near his junior high school.
That image just haunts me. A 16-year-old boy coming home from school to an empty boarding house room. No parents to ask about his day. No family dinner. Just silence.
And that silence is where the wall comes from. That's where it's built. Decades later, critics would talk about the distance in his writing, how his characters always feel like they're watching life from behind a sheet of glass.
Yeah.
That wasn't some stylistic choice he picked out of a catalog. That was his lived reality. Yeah. He learned to observe the world without actually participating in it. Because for him, participating meant losing.
But he's still human. He did try to participate again. And this brings us to what the biographers call the first heartbreak. Because you'd think after all that death, the universe might finally cut him a break.
It did not. This is the story of Hatsuyo Ito.
Okay, so he meets her in Tokyo, right? He's 20 now. He's made it to university. He's trying to have a normal life.
Yes, and he falls deeply, madly in love. And from all accounts, it seemed to be reciprocal. In 1921, they actually got engaged.
Wow.
He was ready to restart his life. He was ready to finally build the family that he had lost.
And then just 1 month later...
she breaks it off.
And this is the part that drives me crazy. The why. I was digging through all the sources. I was looking for a scandal. Did he cheat? Did her parents object? What was it?
The historical record is maddeningly vague. It just says unclear reasons. She wrote a letter ending it, and she cited some vague emergency or impossibility. It was abrupt, it was absolute, and it was unexplained.
In a way, that has to be more damaging than a death.
How so?
Because death is inevitable, it happens to you. But rejection, that's a choice someone makes.
Precisely. It confirmed his deepest, darkest fear, that he was fundamentally unlovable, or that he was just destined to be alone. And we know for a fact he never really recovered from this because of a discovery made very, very recently.
The unsent letter.
Yes. In 2014, researchers were going through his former residence in Kamakura, and they found a letter. It was addressed to Hatsuyo. It was written presumably around the time of the breakup, or maybe shortly after, but he never mailed it.
The fact that he kept it. For 50 years, he held on to that physical artifact of his pain for his entire life.
It's devastating. And there's another layer to it. Hatsuyo actually died in 1951 at age 44. But Kawabata didn't even know she was dead until 1955.
So he was living with a ghost for 4 years without even knowing it.
He was living with a ghost his whole life. And he put that ghost to work. This relationship is the direct inspiration for The Dancing Girl of Izu. And you can argue it's the template for almost every tragic romance he ever wrote. He took that raw, bleeding wound and turned it into high art.
Okay, so let's pivot to that art. Because there's a huge misconception we need to clear up right away. We've established he's this tragic figure, right? He's the ultimate orphan. So when he starts writing in the 1920s at the University of Tokyo, you'd expect him to write these sad, traditional stories about samurais or, I don't know, tea ceremonies.
You would, but you'd be completely wrong.
He was a rebel.
He was a punk in a literary sense. He co-founded a movement literary school called the Shinkankakuha.
Shinkankakuha. Okay, that is a mouthful. What does that actually mean?
Well, it's often translated as neo-impressionism, but scholars really hate that translation. A much better one is the New Sensation School or the New Perception School.
New sensations. Okay, so what were they trying to do? What was so new about it?
You've really got to understand the battlefield of 1920s Japanese literature. On one side, you had the old guard, the naturalists.
Okay.
These were the hardcore realists. They wanted to describe life exactly as it was, gritty, boring, flat. Think of it as a black and white documentary. The goal was objectivity.
Then on the other side.
You had the proletarian literature movement, the Marxists. For them, literature had one job, to be a tool for social revolution. It was essentially propaganda.
Yeah.
Workers of the world unite in literary form.
So Kawabata looks at the boring realists on one side and the angry communists on the other and just says, no thanks.
Exactly. He and his group basically said, art is not a camera and art is not a weapon. Art is a sensation. The Shinkankakuha group was absolutely obsessed with European modernism.
Like what?
Cubism, Expressionism, Dadaism.
Hold on, Dadaism. As in the absurdity movement from Zurich. That seems so incredibly far removed from the whole beautiful, lyrical Japan image we have of him.
It is, but it's absolutely crucial. Kawabata wanted to write sentences that felt like a cubist painting looks. He wanted to smash reality into fragments and then reassemble it based on feeling, not logic.
So how do you do that in writing? I mean, give me a technical example. What does that look like on the page?
Well, one technique they used was dropping grammatical particles to create this jarring, sped-up rhythm. But the big one was mixing the senses and what's called anthropomorphism.
Giving human qualities to inanimate objects.
Precisely. So instead of writing, I felt sad when I looked at the flower, a Shinkankakuha writer, like Kawabata, might write something that translates to, the flower's silver grief pierced my eye.
Wow. So the flower itself possesses the grief.
Exactly. The boundary between the observer and the object is dissolved. It becomes subjective, psychological, almost hallucinatory. This wasn't just theory either. He was actively writing in this style. He wrote screenplays for experimental films.
Like A Page of Madness.
Yes. He wrote the script for A Page of Madness in 1926.
I've seen clips of that film. It's set in an asylum. It's silent. It's terrifying. There are all these masks and distorted stream of consciousness visuals.
And that is the real young Kawabata. He wasn't some old monk meditating in a garden. He was an avant-garde experimenter. He was trying to find a brand new way to see the world. Because the old way, the way of his family, the way of tradition, had died along with his grandfather.
So he takes this new sensation toolkit, this fragmented, sensory, modernist style, and he aims it directly at his own trauma. And that collision, that's what produces the masterpieces.
That's where the magic happens.
We have to dive deep into these because this is the body of work that eventually wins him the Nobel. Let's start with the one that made him famous, The Dancing Girl of Izu.
Published in 1926. This is the story that pretty much every Japanese student reads in high school. It's iconic.
And the plot is deceptively simple. A student who is, let's be honest, basically Kawabata.
Oh, absolutely. It's thinly veiled autobiography.
Is on a walking tour of the Izu Peninsula. He's feeling melancholy, he's got the orphan blues, if you will, and he comes across a troupe of traveling performers.
And specifically, a young dancer in that troupe. She's very young, barely an adolescent. And the student feels this immediate rush of, well, it's hard to pin down. It's not just lust. It's attraction, affection.
It feels like the dawning of eroticism, but it's always kept at a very safe distance.
Distance is the key word for his entire body of work. He walks with them, he talks to them, but he never really crosses the line. There's this beautiful scene where he's at a hot spring and he sees her waving to him from across a ravine, and he realizes her innocence. And that realization kind of cleanses him.
But the ending, it's not a happily ever after situation.
No, it's the opposite. He gets on a boat to go back to Tokyo. She stays on the shore. They part ways forever. And as the boat pulls away, he just cries. He just weeps uncontrollably.
It's that specific Kawabata flavor, isn't it? The beauty is in the separation.
Yes. If he had stayed, if they had tried to have a relationship, it would have been ruined by reality. The fact that it ended, the fact that it's just a memory, makes it perfect.
It's that Hatsuyoitu trauma all over again. The only safe love is a love that leaves you.
Exactly. And he takes that theme and he just perfects it in what many people consider his absolute masterpiece.
Snow Country.
Yukiguni. This is the big one.
Yeah.
If you're going to read only one book by Kawabata, this is probably it.
It's a novel he worked on for over a decade, from 1935 all the way to 1947. And it is a novel of breathtaking coldness and beauty.
Let's set the scene for you. We are in the snow country. That's the western side of the Japanese Alps, where the snow gets incredibly, incredibly deep in the winter.
The opening sentence is one of the most famous in all of modern literature. The train came out of the long tunnel into the snow country. The earth lay white under the night sky.
It just immediately transports you. It's like you go through this dark tunnel, a birth canal maybe, or a passage to the underworld, and you emerge into this white, silent, frozen world. And in this world, we meet our protagonist, Shimamura. He's a Tokyo dilettante, he's wealthy, he's married, but he is profoundly bored with his life.
And he's this expert in Western ballet, but here's the kicker. He has never actually seen a ballet. He just reads about it in books and writes about it.
Which is the ultimate irony, right? He prefers the idea of the dance, the fantasy of it, to the reality of the sweat and the muscles and the effort. He lives in a world of abstraction.
So this guy, who lives entirely in his head, travels to this remote hot spring town in the snow country and meets Kumako, who is a provincial geisha.
And Komako is one of the most vivid characters in all of Japanese literature. She's described as being incredibly clean, almost shining with a kind of purity. But she's also messy. She drinks too much, she falls in love too hard, she bites her arm in frustration. She's just pure, hot, vibrant life.
And Shimamura, how does he treat this vibrant life force?
He watches her. He studies her. It's like she's a beautiful bug in a jar. There's this recurring phrase he uses both in his mind and out loud to describe her life and especially her love for him. He calls it wasted effort.
Tiyuru. Wasted effort. That is so unbelievably cruel.
It's devastatingly cool. She pours her heart out to him. She practices the shamisen until her fingers bleed. She walks through blizzards just to see him for an hour. And he looks at all this passion and thinks, it's beautiful because it's futile.
He knows he's going back to his wife in Tokyo.
He knows he's going to leave. He knows she's trapped forever in this snowbound town. Her passion is beautiful to him specifically because it has no future. It's an aesthetic object for him to appreciate and then discard.
There's a scene early in the book that I think perfectly captures that Shinkankakuha style we were talking about. The train window scene.
Oh, the window scene is pure literary magic.
Yeah.
So Shimamura is on the train at night looking out the window at the dark evening landscape flowing by. But because it's dark outside and lit inside, the window is also a mirror.
So he can see the reflection of a girl's face in the glass. A different girl, Yoko, who is also on the train.
Right. So he's seeing two things at once. The mountains and the fields are moving through her reflected face. It's a superimposition.
A double exposure.
Exactly. And at one point, he sees a light in the distance, a fire or a lamp out in the fields, and it shines directly through the reflection of her eye. And he thinks, the eye turned into a strange, unearthly fire. It's cubism in prose. He's seeing her internal beauty and the external coldness of the world simultaneously.
And that defines his entire relationship with the world. He's always watching the reflection, never the reality.
And that's why the book is such a masterpiece of isolation. Even when he and Komako are in bed together making love, he's a million miles away, analyzing the aesthetics of the situation. It's chilling.
It really is. So if Snow Country is about this cold, beautiful isolation, the next big novel, 1,000 Cranes, kind of brings that toxicity indoors into the family.
Yes, published between 1949 and 1951, this book takes the sacred Japanese tea ceremony and, well, it basically drags it through the mud.
I think most Westerners have this very specific idea of the tea ceremony. It's pure, it's zen, it's this quiet, holy moment.
It is supposed to be.
Yep.
There are 4 principles, wakasijaku: harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. But Kawabata asks a really disturbing question. What if the people holding the beautiful tea bowls are morally terrible?
The plot is, it's like a dark soap opera.
It's very soapy, it's very Freudian and messy. The protagonist, a young man named Kikuji, goes to a tea ceremony and ends up getting involved with the mistress of his own dead father.
And then he's also attracted to her daughter. It's a mess.
It's a complete mess. But look at how Kawabata handles the objects. The tea bowls, the water jar, the tea caddy. There's a famous scene involving a specific Shino water jar and a generic tea bowl. He describes these ceramic objects as having a life, a history, a soul of their own.
And he contrasts the permanence and purity of the bowls with the, frailty and ugliness of the people using them.
That's the core of the novel. The bowls are hundreds of years old. They are perfect. They've been passed down through generations. But the humans. We are jealous, we engage in adultery, we die, we rot. The ugliness of human affairs is set against the timeless beauty of the tea tools.
It almost feels like the objects are judging the people.
I think they are.
Hmm.
Kawabata is asking, can beauty truly exist if the moral center is completely rotten? The tea ceremony in this book isn't a sanctuary from the world, it's a trap. It's a stage where the ghosts of the past, the dead father, the mistresses, come back to haunt the living through these inanimate objects.
It's incredibly claustrophobic. And speaking of claustrophobic family dynamics, let's talk about The Sound of the Mountain.
This is often called his most mature work. It's set in Kamakura, which is where Kawabata actually lived for much of his life.
And the protagonist, Shingo, is an old man, and he starts hearing things at night.
He hears the sound of the mountain. It's this deep, rumbling roar that seemingly only he can hear, and he interprets it as the announcement of his own approaching death.
This book feels so incredibly modern to me because it deals with what we'd now call the sandwich generation problem. Shingo is deeply disappointed in his adult children.
Deeply. His son is a serial cheater. His daughter is in a failed marriage and has moved back home. He looks at his own offspring and he just sees failure, a legacy of unhappiness.
It's the fear of obsolescence, isn't it? He's aging, his memory is starting to slip, he feels no real passion for his wife anymore, and the only person in the house that he feels a real connection with is his daughter-in-law, Kikuko.
The son's wife.
Right. And here we go again with that forbidden, impossible connection. He's attracted to her.
But it's layered. It's not just a simple attraction. The book reveals that he's drawn to her because she reminds him of his wife's sister, a woman he was secretly in love with in his youth, the Hatsuyu figure rearing her head again. He is an old man reaching for a phantom from his past through a taboo relationship in the present.
And just like in Snow Country, nothing happens in the typical Hollywood sense. They don't run away together. There's no big dramatic confrontation.
No. They just exist in this quiet state of shared longing and unspoken understanding. He watches a sunflower follow the sun across the sky and feels the immense tragedy of nature. It's a book about the quiet terror of getting old and realizing you never really connected with anyone the way you wanted to.
Okay, now we have to talk about the outlier. The one book that's completely different from all the others, the one that actually has a clear winner and a clear loser, The Master of Go.
This is the book that Kawabata himself considered his finest work. And it's fascinating because it's a chronicle novel. It's based on a real Go match that he was assigned to report on for the Mainichi newspaper back in 1938.
And for any listeners who don't know Go, it's a board game, but saying that is like saying war is just a disagreement. It's infinitely complex.
It's about territory control. It's about life and death on a grid.
Yeah.
And this particular match, this was the Super Bowl of the Japanese mind.
You had the reigning master, Shusai. He was the last of the old school. He represented feudal Japan, tradition, and almost divine intuition for the game.
And you had the challenger, Otake, who was based on a real player named Minoru Kitani. He was young, modern, rational. He played by the clock. He represented the new scientific Japan.
And this match took months to play, right?
It took forever. They would play for a few hours, then the referee would call time, they would seal the next move in an envelope, and everyone would go home for days or weeks. The master was very sick, he was dying, and Kawabata was there, watching every single move.
And the outcome?
The master loses, the tradition loses, the modern era wins.
And the master dies about a year later.
He does. And the critical interpretation, which is almost universally accepted, is that this is a massive symbolic parallel to the defeat of Japan in World War II.
Oh.
The invincible Japan, the master, losing to the cold, rational, industrial mechanics of the modern world, the challenger. It is an elegy, but not for a person. It's an elegy for an entire culture. In his other books, the loss is personal and lyrical. In this book, the loss is national and devastatingly final.
So we have this incredible body of Work Snow Country, Thousand Cranes, The Master of Go. And then in 1968, the Nobel Committee in Sweden looks at all of this and says, this is it. This expresses the essence of the Japanese mind.
Which is a pretty heavy weight to put on one person's shoulders.
No kidding. His acceptance speech is titled Japan the Beautiful and Myself. And I really want to dig into this for a minute because it sounds like it could be a tourist brochure, but it's actually a deep philosophy lecture.
It is a profound defense of ambiguity. He spends most of the speech talking about Zen
Yeah.
Buddhism, but not the, California Zen of just relaxing and feeling good. He talks about the Zen of discipline and emptiness.
He uses this incredible phrase. He says, the heart of the ink painting is in space, abbreviation, what is left undrawn.
And that right there is the deep dive takeaway for his entire style. When you read Kawabata, you have to read the white space on the page. He believed that if you describe everything, if you explain every motivation, you kill the imagination. You have to leave room for the reader to enter the story. He compares it to ikebana, Japanese flower arranging,
Where the empty space between the branches is just as important as the flowers themselves.
It's more important than some schools of thought. That's where the beauty is.
But then, in the middle of this beautiful, serene speech about flowers and empty space, he drops a bomb. He starts talking about suicide.
He does. It's quite jarring. He discusses his friend, the famous writer Ryunosuke Akutagawa, who had killed himself decades earlier. And Kawabata says pretty explicitly, however alienated one may be from the world, suicide is not a form of enlightenment.
So he rejects it. He condemns it.
He seems to. But then, almost immediately after, he quotes the eccentric Zen priest Ikki, who said, "Among those who give thoughts to things, is there one who does not think of suicide?"
Wow. Is there one who does not think of suicide? That question just hangs over the rest of the speech. It's like he's admitting that the darkness is always there, lurking right underneath all the beauty.
And that leads us, inevitably, to the final mystery, the last unfinished chapter of his own life.
April 16th, 1972, 4 years after winning the Nobel Prize.
Kawabata is found dead in his work apartment in Zushi. He had gassed himself.
Now, the immediate reaction, especially in the West, is, of course, he did it. He followed the pattern of so many other writers. But the source material we have says it's much more controversial than that.
It is deeply controversial in Japan. The main reason is that he left no note. Zero. Nothing. This is a man who wrote millions of words, a master of expressing the most subtle nuances of the heart, and he left nothing to explain his final act.
His widow, Hideko, always claimed it was an accident, right?
She did. She maintained until her death that he was just clumsy, that he was maybe preparing a bath and mistakenly unplugged the gas tap, and many of his close friends supported that theory. They said he seemed normal, even happy in his final days.
But there are these darker currents. There were rumors of an illicit affair, and more concretely, he had just been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
And for a writer, that's a death sentence. He was terrified of losing his ability to hold a pen, to write.
And then there's the giant shadow hanging over everything, the Mishima factor.
Yukio Mishima, the brilliant, flamboyant, controversial rock star of Japanese literature. He was Kawabata's protege and friend.
And in 1970, 2 years before Kawabata's death, Mishima committed ritual suicide seppuku after a failed coup attempt at a military base. It was bloody, it was public, it was theatrical and shocking.
It was the polar opposite of everything Kawabata stood for.
How did Kawabata take it?
It absolutely broke him. He was one of the first people to identify the body. He went to the morgue, and afterwards, his biographer, Takeo Okuno, said that Kawabata was relentlessly haunted. He told Okuno that he had nightmares about Mishima for 200 or 300 nights in a row.
200 or 300 nights. Imagine that. For almost a year, every single night, you're seeing the specter of your friend's violent death.
He started telling friends that he hoped his plane would crash when he was traveling. He was passively seeking death. The shock of Mishima's very loud, very political suicide seems to have just hollowed him out.
But the way he died, it was so different from Mishima. Mishima stood on a balcony and screamed at the world. Kawabata just turned on a tap and faded out.
And that's the crucial difference. Mishima wanted to make a statement. His death was a final, grand performance. Kawabata, it seems, just wanted to disappear. His death was silent. It was private. It was, in a very tragic way, very Kawabata.
It was an ending that wasn't an ending.
It was just a cessation.
Like his books, they don't resolve, they don't tie everything up in a neat bow, they just stop.
Exactly. Snow Country ends in the middle of a fire in chaos. Thousand Cranes ends on a note of deep uncertainty. His life ended in silence, leaving only questions.
So let's bring this all back to the present. Why should you, our listener, driving to work or walking the dog in 2026, care about a quiet Japanese man who wrote about tea bowls and snow back in the 1930s? What's the takeaway?
I think it's because we have lost the appreciation for the unfinished. We live in a world that absolutely demands closure. We binge-watch shows because we need to know how it ends. We want clear answers, happy endings, definitive takes. Social media forces us to have a strong opinion on everything. instantly.
And Kawabata's entire body of work says, just slow down, you don't need a neat answer.
He says there is profound beauty in the uncertainty. He teaches us to look at what he called the wasted effort, the failed relationships, the unfinished projects, the moments of loneliness, and to see them not as failures but as art. He validates the sadness in a way that's incredibly powerful.
It's the power of negative space. In a world that is just getting louder and louder and louder, he's the silence.
And silence is where the truth usually hides.
I want to leave you with one final thought. We talked about that quote he used in his Nobel speech from the priest Iki's. Among those who give thoughts to things, is there one who does not think of suicide? It's a dark, troubling question.
It is.
But maybe we can flip it. Among those who give thoughts to things, is there one who does not find beauty in the void? Kawabata didn't leave a suicide note. He left us a Nobel Prize-winning bibliography. He left the final, most important page undrawn. And maybe, as he told us in his speech, that's where the real heart of the painting lies.
A haunting but beautiful way to think about it.
Thanks for traveling to the snow country with us. We'll see you on the next deep dive.